Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. This is kind of a different thing for me to do this podcast type series. So thanks so much for sticking with us, hanging around, and as we just kind of get started with this, this is my friend Nate Stevens, who I'm with today, and we are going to be talking about a topic that I was not intending to necessarily be the first one, but I just really want to do really just conversations that are just meaningful versus like surface level type stuff. And this is a question that I get asked about a lot, not necessarily always my opinion on, but just the conversation I think right now in our generation is pretty popular, but that is being dating and relationships and stuff like that. So anyways, today I'm with my friend Nate, and we are going to just kind of jump into that. But before we do, I thought we could just kind of say how we know each other. Mm-hmm. And if you could tell a little bit about yourself first, and then we'll get into how we know each other.
My name is Nathan Stevens. And by the time this releases, I'll be the discipleship pastor, going through the ordination process right now, but discipleship pastor at North Bullitt Christian Church. We're a small 200-sized church in Shepherdsville, Kentucky. So it's right outside of the Louisville area. Been here about 4 years. Absolutely love it. I studied at Asbury University, got my degree in English and theology. Was a high school teacher before that, carpet cleaner before that. I've been around, and so love what I'm doing. And yeah, we've known each other since high school. Yeah. We were in the same youth group together, but we never spoke.
Yeah. So we went to the same church, but we didn't like I knew of you, mm-hmm. and I knew of you as more like the funny, like kind of, all around guy. But yeah, we did not really know each other that much, and we were friends on Instagram though. Yeah. And funny enough, by the time we really started connecting was when I was getting into TikTok. Like, I was like, oh, this is like, I was late to the game, but I was getting into it. And Nate had this story up, and I think I had looked at your stories before and stuff, but this one I just was like, oh my gosh, like, so I'll let you tell the story. But when he posted this on Instagram, I was like, you have to put this on TikTok. So if you want to share the story really quick.
I'll give like the sparklets of it. It's on my TikTok. I think my TikTok's Hooded Nate, I think. But long story short, I was looking for a book. I was looking for a bookstore, and I think I went to the wrong address, and it was like an empty warehouse, and a lady in the back came out and was like, oh my gosh, your name is Nate. And I was like, yes, do I know you? And she didn't, and she goes, oh, we've been waiting for you. And I was like, well, who is we? And she led me downstairs into this basement of this warehouse, and there's like 20-ish people or so there in like a U shape, and just looking at me. And I was like, oh, I think there's some misunderstanding. You got the wrong Nate. And they're like, oh, no, you're Nate. We've been wanting you to give a message. And I was like, oh, maybe there's like a Bible study. This is weird. So I gave like a 5-minute Devo there. Like, hey, God loves us. Like, you can't out-sin the grace of God. Like a pretty surface level gospel presentation. And the room was a little bit weird. The people were they were nice, but they were a little off. And they're like, oh my gosh, Nate, that was beautiful. Like, we'd love to pray for you. And I was like, for sure, yeah, go for it. And they put their hands on me, laid hands on me, and they were like, dear Satan, we thank you. And I like jumped up. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in the middle of a satanic gathering. And Satanists are not devil worshippers. They're just nature lovers.
Weren't
and,
there
spiritual.
like sideways crosses or something on the wall?
There were sideways crosses, because upside down cross I know is satanic or wrong, but a sideways cross, like, I have no idea what that means. And so I had just no clue. And so I just booked it out of there, and I ran away. And so I put that up on my Instagram story. Yeah. And that's where you messaged me. I think that's what reconnected.
Yes. Yeah. So I was like, you got to post it. So you did on TikTok, and it went viral. Yeah, it went pretty well.
Yeah. I got like, I had to, it was before I could do 3-minute videos. And so I had 500,000 views on the first part. And the second part, I had like almost 500,000 views. I gained like 10,000 followers just from this video.
So funny.
And I was like, oh my gosh, all I had to do was put myself in danger for views. And so, but yeah, I think that's funny. So you're the reason I went semi-viral, and then that's what kicked off our friendship.
I know. It's hilarious. So yeah, that was a pretty good start to that. So anyways, so now we're gonna talk about dating.
Right. Good segue.
No, but yeah, so I do appreciate Nate very much. Like his input and stuff on things is very I think very spot on and with a very clear conscience, and you always look at things from a very biblical like standpoint. So with that being said, I really just feel like this would be, this has been one that's been asked about. I feel like this is going to be a good one to dive into. And it's one that I feel like, a topic that I feel like the Lord's kind of given me more, what's the word? Like peace into leaning into a little bit more, because it's been one I've probably strayed away from for a bit. And so, yeah, I'm excited to jump in. But I really just want to hear, your kind of thoughts on things. And we've already talked a little bit about it. But but anyway, so I will go ahead and jump in. I kind of categorized this into 3 different components. And in each one of those will break down some questions. But those 3 things I feel like we should touch on would be contentment and singleness, and some important like qualities and non-negotiables, if that's a thing that you have. And then the second one would be masculine and feminine roles. And the third would be more what does scripture and God and, talk about and dating and such. So anyways, we'll jump on in. So for the first one, my first question is, what advice would you give to someone who is in a place of singleness, but is maybe feeling more restless or impatient or having a hard time finding contentment in that? Because obviously we all start, whatever age you're at, you start at that at some point. So.
Yeah. I think, first off, I think the church, by and large, does a really poor job ministering to single people. And because single people, especially at our age, I'm 26, you're 23.
Almost.
We're so close. But I think at our age, there's either you're in college, and so you have college ministry, and then you have young adults ministry, like post-college, and then you have like the newlywed stuff. So single people don't really know where to fall into, and I think the church doesn't know how to handle them. And so I think that will attribute to a lot of the restlessness or the discontentment that I think single people in the church will have. But I will say this, so someone who is single and feeling like, or just struggling with being single and how to navigate that, I think, number one, it is okay to be discontent in that. I can't stand the advice of, when you just least expect it, there it is, or you need to be content and you need to be happy in your season of life, and then the Lord is going to give that to you. And I don't see that being the case. We see those in other aspects of our life, perhaps, but I don't see that in marriage and in dating and whatnot. It's okay to be discontent. It's okay to like desire to be a husband or to be a wife. I mean, I've told you today, my biggest desire as a man is to be a godly husband and a godly father. Like I want a family. And so there's nothing wrong with having that desire there. So it's okay to be discontent. Now, if that leads into areas of sin like anger and frustration and like yelling out at God, then maybe we need to check some things. But it's okay to desire those things. And so cut yourself some slack, I would say. Also, I tell this to people. I say, be patient, but be proactive. And so be patient. Like the first guy that comes along, the first girl that comes along, you don't have to date him. You don't have to marry him. So be patient and trust the process in a sense, but also be proactive and go on dates. Put yourself out there in a sense. So if someone asks you out, go for it. And if you don't like them, you can always just say no. So you balance that patience and being proactive, I would say, is a huge beneficial, guiding rule. And then lastly, I would say too, a verse I live my life by is Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you. If you're seeking God first in all things, if God's your top priority, that, along with anything else, like a career or friendships or deeper trust in others, whatever, all that's going to come naturally. And that's not in a prosperity gospel lens. But if you're trusting the Lord, if you're seeking after him, if you're seeking out godliness, growing in your relationship with him, the Lord's going to honor that, but also it will naturally come. And I lied. Lastly, I do have a last thing on that, actually. Yeah. God does not call people into singleness. I think that's another thing. People, the older they get and the more they're single, will start to panic. Like, oh my gosh, what if God just wants me to be single? God doesn't want anybody to be single, and God doesn't want everybody to be married. Like God, it sounds weird to say as a pastor, God doesn't really care about your marital set. God is going to be equally glorified and honored you being single and you being in a marriage relationship. There are verses where Paul says, yeah, I wish everybody was like me and single, and then he gives some benefits to that. But Paul also says, like, hey, there's also a beautiful thing in marriage. And so God doesn't call you into singleness. You might have giftings that are better displayed in singleness, but don't worry. And I think that's a lot of the discontentment going back is kind of, I'm impatient and I don't know, and oh my gosh, like maybe God's calling me into singleness and I don't want to do that. Like God's not going to drag you kicking and screaming into singleness.
Yeah, I think if you have that desire, most likely that's from God. That's, I mean, he's going to fulfill those type of things. But it's all in, just that relationship with him is ultimately, I think, the biggest thing, because
absolutely.
That is how you decipher through all those questions and that feeling. And so that was good. That was a good answer. Yeah, perfect. I think there's also like sort of a, because I know what you mean. Like there's almost a attractiveness too when you are just in that relationship with God, and I agree. Like, it's like you don't want to be necessarily like, oh, I'm just going to be like content in this and lie to yourself, know, if that's not the case. But at the same time, people will be more drawn to you if you're secure in your relationship with God. And, they won't feel, because that other person's not going to give you anything that God, everything, your fulfillment, your everything is going to come through Christ and God. And so
absolutely,
if you don't have that, when the relationship, goes through its low points and high, like if you don't have that to fall back on, then it's going to be a little bit harder.
Your significant other will let you down and will fail you. And so if you put your stock and your worth in that, and like that's my highest priority, then that's an idol, and you need to work on that.
Right.
That's a struggle people have. It's a struggle I've had in the past. But the Lord's not going to let you down. And so, if your priority is the Lord and your relationship with him, not to manipulate that to get a spouse, but I believe, the most attractive thing, as a guy, for me, the most attractive thing for a woman is a woman who loves the Lord and has that. People have described my current girlfriend as, she's just got that love of the Lord glow. And like no one in the secular world would understand what that means, I would say. But like as a Christian man, I'm like, I see her worship the Lord. I see her read the Bible, and I'm like, man, I got to give me some of that.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah, she seems super sweet. That's so fun. So that's perfect. That leads right into our second question.
Right.
So our second one is kind of like, what are things you look for? What are some non-negotiables if you have? And kind of what's the importance of that too?
Yeah, I think as a Christian, I think everybody should have non-negotiables. As a Christian, you need to have, I would say every Christian should have 3 non-negotiables. And then your own personality and your lifestyle you'll have more kind of specific non-negotiables for you and like your preferences or whatever. So I think every Christian should have 3. Number 1, as silly as it sounds, you have to have a non-Christian, you have to be dating a Christian. You cannot be dating a non-Christian. Paul says very clearly, do not be unequally yoked in Corinthians. And if we date someone with the intent of like missionary dating, like with the intent of bringing them into the fold, more often than not that doesn't work, and you will be brought down. And even regardless, if you're dating a non-Christian, the bedrock of your relationship will be rooted in sin and disobedience to God, even though it may not feel like that. You see what marriage is supposed to be, and unequally yoked. If you're unequally yoked, you're disobedient to the Lord, and so your relationship by default is not honoring to the Lord. And with that being said, flip that, you have to be dating a Christian. Need to.
I think there's even, the crazy thing is, so many people can say, well, yeah, they're a Christian. Like they have their Instagram bio has Bible verses in it and all this stuff. So define that a little bit more, what you're looking for in someone when they say they're a Christian.
And that leads into my second one then, is they need to be an active member of a church. And because not going to church doesn't make you a Christian, but it is the good test and like the first fruit to show that you are a believer and that someone is a serious believer. So like, oh, they're a Christian. Well, awesome. Like, when's the last time they've gone to church? When's the last time they've served, volunteered? How often are they reading their Bible? A lot of these things just naturally get flushed out if you have regular church attendance. And for me, at least personally, that shows me where your priorities lie. And I know a lot of people have issues with organized religion. Obviously, I'm biased being on staff. I think if you're not a part of a local church, you're being disobedient to the Lord. But being active in your faith. And so being a part of a local church, reading the scriptures, having a personal quiet time with the Lord. And then my third non-negotiable, which will answer your question too, is someone who's going to prioritize God over you. And so I tell this to people all the time. I've heard it described to me as well. It's like a triangle. Like it's you and your spouse, or you and your significant other. And as you grow closer together, you're going closer to the Lord. And so that should be your aim, but you should always be putting God first. Like I'm trying to grow towards the Lord. I'm not trying to grow towards her. She's not going this way. We're both going closer to God. And as we get closer to God, we're also coming closer together. I'm trying to think. Other than that, just the spiritual disciplines. Like you can say you're a Christian, but if you're getting drunk on the weekends and if you have no self-control, no patience, no honesty, it's like, I don't really know. Like kind of like 1 John, like I don't think you were ever really a part of us in the first place. But I think those three things will prove that someone is a legitimate Christian, but also will prove where their heart lies as well. And those, I would say, as a Christian, coming from me personally, like these need to be your non-negotiables. And if they're not non-negotiable, if you don't really care, then I think we need to ask other questions about our heart and what do we actually want in our relationships.
So, piggyback question then. What would your advice be, or what's your input on, okay, so like, let's say someone finds someone, they're like, oh, like they have all the Christian qualities I want, or they're like, they look like this way or that way, but I'm not attracted to them, or I'm not like, because I feel like sometimes, especially like if you're in a church type setting, you might feel pressured, like, well, this person like seems perfect and all that, but I'm not, because I feel like the Lord does give. That is something like I feel like you should be attracted to them. You should like how their lifestyle is. Like those aren't necessarily a spiritual type, thing or anything, but there's still certain people you maybe vibe with better, or like, certain things about. So
I would say, like, if you are a guy or a girl and you meet someone, that you love their personality, they've got those spiritual disciplines, but there's just not that physical attraction there. I would say, like, give them a chance. If they're interested in you and you're just like, I'm not physically attracted to you, but you have all these qualities, give them a chance. Go on one date. See if anything changes, because you see them in a different lens and you begin to kind of look at them in a different light. Give them a chance. But you don't owe them anything, And so if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You hit the nail on the head. Like, you have to be physically attracted to your spouse or your significant other. Like, that's part of the thing. And so it's one of those like unfortunate things. If you meet someone, it's like, oh, I really think you have all the qualities of, a wife that I would want to have, but I just am not attracted to you. Like, that's a hard spot to be in, and nobody wants to hear that. No. But it's not always
personal. I mean, I think
it's
just people are, you like certain things and not. And
give them a chance. Like, try it. Like, I'm a huge advocate for just trying it out, seeing where it goes. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. There's no pressure. I think we always swing the pendulum the opposite way. Like, well, it's the beauty on the inside that matters. And absolutely, I want to amen that. But it's like, well, what if they're ugly? What if I don't like them? There's definitely
that aspect. And I think that God put that in us for a reason. So I don't think it's like, oh, ignore your...
Yeah, don't ignore what you're attracted to.
Right.
Because then you're going to be miserable.
Yeah. So just to loosen it up a little bit, because we're so like heavy on this, like, the spirituality part of it. What are some just things you generally like look for in a girl that aren't, obviously your spiritual stuff is like the first in the head, but like what are some other just qualities that you look for in a girl?
So me personally, qualities I look for, like, they've got to be respectful, not just to me, but just to other people. Like, people always say, like, see how they interact with their parents, see how they interact with servers and waiters at restaurants.
Which means going out and doing dates and
so
stuff.
You go out with them. Yeah. See how they interact with people. So they've got to be respectful. Like, if they're just, everything's a joke to them, or if everything is, they're putting other people down to bring themselves up, I'm just not into that. And I think, I'm a super respectful person. I try to be nice. Like, I love to joke, but I try to be nice to people where I can. And if someone's just being rude constantly, I just can't deal with that. And I know that sounds like, well, duh, who does? But that's something huge for me. Like, they got to be respectful and kind.
I think you can overlook that sometimes. Like, if you are attracted to them, you could be like, well, they're just being silly or something. But maybe it is really like something
and there's a line.
Be concerned about.
Like, there's nothing wrong with like teasing a waiter or waitress. And there's nothing wrong with teasing your friends. Again, my friends would be the first to say, Nate, destroys me a lot, kind of thing. But yeah, if it's just like it's being cruel for the sake of being cruel or mean for the sake of being mean, I just can't vibe with that. Someone has got to share my interests or be open to sharing my interests. And again, this is super common, but like, it's okay if we don't have the same interests. We don't have to be universal, but if it's like, hey, I really enjoy going to baseball games, or I really enjoy reading or walking around the park, or just these basic generic things. And if they're just like, I don't like that, and I'm not even willing to experience that with you, like they've got to be willing to, kind of compromise for me, because I'm going to compromise for them as well.
Right, it's
like,
a two-way. Yeah.
I will watch 3 seasons of Grey's Anatomy if you want me to, and I don't want to, but if that's your show, like I want to spend time with you, I'll do it. And
that's so good.
Stuff like that, they got to like be open to sharing my interests. And I wrote something else down as well. They got, at least for me again, so I'm a pastor and I'm in ministry. So mine is a little specific. They have to be okay with the expectations of what me being a pastor looks like, and the expectations then of dating a pastor and potentially being married to a pastor. Not that you need to have this like insurmountable biblical knowledge out there. Absolutely not. But there is like eyes will be on you. People will be looking at you. There's some pressure, whether it should be there or should be not. That's another discussion. But they just got to be okay with what that looks like. And from that as well. And I've had many conversations and dates where we go our separate ways over this. Like, hey, we go to church where I work because like I'm a pastor at North Bullitt Christian Church. So if you don't like worshiping at North Bullitt Christian Church, we can't date. We can't be together because this is where I work and this is where we have to worship. And so it's kind of contingent on where I find work. And that's hard. And so people have got to be okay with that. Yeah. And so I've been in conversation with, well, I just really like my church. I could never see myself leaving. Like, I love that about you. And that's awesome. I don't want to take you away from that. So I think we should just stop here kind of thing.
Yeah, communication on that.
Yeah. So those are just my kind of things. And then, I look for, obviously if someone shares my interests, I'm a huge Star Wars dork. I like comics, like I cross the gambit of like nerd stuff. And so if someone likes those things, awesome. Yeah. It's not a deal breaker, but like if they're just like, man, I want to sit and watch The Phantom Menace. Be like, what's your ring size?
Yeah.
Like, I'm down. Let's do this. Let's get this
You're the one.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny. Perfect. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? Do you have any?
So yeah, I'm all with you on all of that. I think I love that you kind of broke down the Christianity thing, because that's something that I've over the years really learned more and more. Because I was raised in a very Christian home, but still, even with that, you still have to learn what that means, what your relationship with God looks like, and what kind of person God's wanting you with. And as a woman, obviously, I believe that the man is more the headship type thing, and I'm very much into, reading my word and scriptures and stuff. So I would be doing myself an injustice to be with someone or to, be with someone that's lesser than, and still expect them to lead in a way that would be glorifying to God. And obviously there's been times where I've too been through like, well, maybe mine will rub off on them, or, you have those thoughts and those are real. And, they are very hard as you're deciphering through things, okay, as I do this, as I maybe show some interest in this person, like you're maturing, you're learning what that looks like, and maybe not making some of the excuses you used to make.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. But but outside of that, I would definitely say I do think the attraction thing is for sure. I know that there's a lot of things that say, I think women tend to can fall more over time, where men are a little bit more like quick to, I know,
my experience. Yeah.
So
for me, it's like,
yeah. So there is that aspect, but I still think women still have an attraction, that you would be more drawn to. I feel like they need to be someone that's really just kind of easygoing, fun, that sort of thing. Obviously, I don't believe that we're supposed to be just like stressed out all the time and worrying about everything. So
they can't be boring.
Can't be boring. No, but also I think like healthy lifestyle is a big one, because that is I think that's honoring to the Lord too, because if you're not driven to be mentally and physically healthy and all that, it's not going to help down the road in any way, whether you have a family or not,
Right.
like you want to be there for them too. And so I think that's just really important as well. And with a lot of my followers know that I have some of the health issues that I do. That is also a big thing. It's like, I that's a big part of my life is making sure that, you're living the best that you can with what, the Lord the body God's given you. And then also just being someone that's really servant hearted. I think that's a big thing. And just very living life for God and not afraid to keep learning and letting God kind of direct, your steps, because I think sometimes we can be like, okay, well, here's my direction or whatever, but that relationship with God, he's gonna like kind of direct you through that. And as that's also just a big thing when you're dating, like, oh, is this someone that the Lord is wanting me to entertain with, or is this, so just having that that ability to not be stuck in your ways, I guess, too much.
Yeah, you need to be flexible.
Yes, flexible. That's a great.
So
you
need to be open to the idea that other people live their lives differently, and a Christian walk with someone,
yes,
is going to involve you doing some things differently.
Yes,
doing some things differently.
Yes,
I like that.
Yeah.
I want to add another one. I just thought of. I'm surprised I didn't think about this earlier. Non-negotiable for me, but then also I think in general, the broader sense, what your envision of a family is like. So, do you want kids? Do you not want kids is a big one. So for me, like, I want kids. I cannot date someone if they don't want kids, or if they're on the fence about it, but leaning more towards, like, I'd be open to it one day, but I really kind of don't. And it's like, okay, no, like, I want kids really badly.
Right.
That's so you're kind of even talking about that, like being a little bit more flexible. Like, you can be like, I want to have 5 kids. Like, well, no, like, you be flexible in the number, but I would say another one that people should think through is, how many kids do I want? What's my family gonna look like? You don't have to answer that, but the big one is like, do I want to get married one day, and do I want to have kids one day? And if your partner has different answers than that, I think you need to reevaluate what you want to do. But those, sorry,
that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay, let's go ahead. We're gonna take a break real quick, and then we'll come right back. Okay, welcome back, guys. Before we jump into the next question, I did just want to touch on, you had mentioned that you are newly dating a girl. She seems super sweet. But I just wanted to touch on kind of our friendship since that, because that is a topic a lot of people don't talk about, is like, if you are friends with someone of the opposite gender, like, what does that look like when you start dating someone else? So, I've noticed that it definitely has shifted a little bit, but in a great way. And I haven't even talked to you about this yet, but but like, there's been a couple times where I've sent him a text. We've been talking about this podcast. That's pretty much been the main thing here. And so the past week or two, and where I've sent you text on that, and you're like, hey, I'm busy, and I know you have other things going on too, but there's been quite a few times where it's like, oh, I'm busy and whatever. And I think it's great, especially if you are with her. And I think it's super, like, I'm like, yes, like, put me, like, if you have the opposite gender friend that is texting you or whatever, you've been friends with, even if you've been friends for a very long time and you do have a close relation, but you start seeing someone, what does that look like with that person then? And for me, like, I've always been like, that is great. Like, if you put then your friend, because that's important, that relationship's important to you, then they should be coming first. But what is your input on that?
I'll say first off, she's gonna get so embarrassed that
she's
we're talking
so cute
about her. Yeah, she is. A couple things. I'll speak corporately as like men and women as a whole, and then I'll do specifically with us. Yeah, it's okay to have friends of the opposite sex, the opposite gender. Like, that's totally fine. I would encourage that. Actually, I think it's healthy. But that relationship does need to look differently than, in some degree, when you start dating someone. Now, it helps if they already know each other, but if they don't, like, you just got to be cautious. Like, hey, we can't hang out one-on-one as much or in certain ways anymore. because I'm with someone, and that might ruin the friendship. That might hurt, but you
Yeah.
care about
Yeah.
that person, that man or girl, and so you just gotta like, hey, they come first now, and I'm sorry, and I don't want to make them uncomfortable. And so for me, and with our friendship and with my relationship, personally, like I've been cheated on before, so like I'm a little bit more sensitive to things like that. And I've also had conversations with like, hey, like that guy's into you, and it's super obvious, and they're like, oh no, he's just a friend, and then like sure enough, like oh my gosh, like he was hitting on me or made me feel uncomfortable, and it's like, yeah, it's like I never want to be on the recipient or the receiving end of that. I don't want my significant other to have to worry about those kind of things. And so even like with you coming down, what I really appreciate about you was like, hey, text her, make sure she's comfortable with it. And I was like, psh, I already did.
Yeah.
And so, what that looks like for me, and maybe this would help other people, like giving a good framework, is I texted her and said, hey, my friend Kate is coming down for these reasons, and I want to ask your permission, or I just want to see if you're comfortable if, like, she comes over, and if we do this, if we hang out for the day, if you're not comfortable with it, I need you to tell me, because if you say you're comfortable with it,
and
you're
not
really not,
right,
that's like, you don't sound rude, like,
Yep.
I didn't say this part, but that's not my problem then, because you gave me the green light. So if you're gonna say no, please, I want you to say no. There's no hard feelings.
Yeah, be upfront.
And she was awesome. She was like, no, I totally trust you. She would also murder me in my sleep if she found out like anything went down with anything. If I ever did anything bad, she would beat the crap out of me. And you would too.
Yeah,
you would probably.
yeah. I was like, yeah, she's welcome to come,
Yeah, you
that sort of
offered.
thing. So
And
I
so-
think it is important to be aware of that and not be like, not play dumb about it, because I do think that it's important to, have those conversations.
Yeah.
And just put it out there.
There's
but,
no reason, and don't let anyone ever tell you, unless they have a good reason, of you need to cut that person out of your life. Like if she would have come to me and says, no, I don't even want you guys, like I don't want you talking to any of your female friends, then that's a conversation we need to have, because I've got close female friends here at my church, like you and other people, and it's like, okay, like we need to discuss why,
Right.
And to get to the heart of this issue. Thankfully she's not like that, but there are a lot of people who are in relationships that like my significant other won't even let me talk to other people. They made me block all of my guy friends or block all of my female friends, and that's just wrong, and that's not okay.
It's a hard line, especially if there's past hurts there.
But if it's like, hey, that person's trying to ask you out while we're dating, I want them blocked. That's a different conversation.
Right.
But as like a universal,
yes.
if they are a girl,
Yes.
block them.
I think another thing, though, it kind of goes with like the being open, though, too, is like if you are, let's say, with your significant other, like totally chill with them, seeing, like you're not trying to hide text, or you're not trying to, then there is a lot more trust that can be built on that.
For sure.
But it's when there's more the keeping things out of, even if there's nothing to hide, but like kind of keeping it at like a secret, that makes a lot more, I think that causes a lot more worry, especially for women probably.
Yeah.
So
the only reason I don't let Grayson look at my phone right now is because I have a gift for her, and it's like very well noticed on my phone, and I don't want her to accidentally see the gift.
Yeah.
And so if she ever grabs it, like, please.
Wait.
I was like, just wait for a couple more weeks.
Wait,
and look at my phone.
then you can.
I promise. Like, and like, so,
That's
but
funny.
but I think things like that, like,
Yeah.
I have a good friend. He and his wife will communicate that very well, and they'll like, hey, do you want us to see my phone for the day? Or if you're feeling invalidated, or if you're feeling nervous or not secure in our marriage, would you like to look at my phone and look through my messages? Like, they just have open communication, and I think that's just awesome.
Yeah.
And that might not work for everybody, but I think that's a really cool thing. If you're just ever feeling insecure or feeling invalidated or nervous, like being comfortable to say, can I look through your phone, and being okay, like, hey, would you just mind, and stuff like that. Like, put safeguards up.
Yes.
At that point.
And I think another good thing would be that, and this is kind of homework or stuff you do before you're even in a relationship, but is kind of know where you draw the line of someone you are interested with and someone who is a friend. So kind of what you allow your friends to do with you versus what so like, for example, I'm very much like, if it is, let's say, a guy friend, unless I am interested or we've talked about, a relationship type thing, I I don't really allow them to do things that I would allow someone that I am dating to do for me type thing.
Yeah.
So, because I think that also can kind of mess up the, first of all, it kind of blurs the lines on things. But it also can just lead to making maybe that other person, especially for guys, like I feel like there's studies and stuff that like them fixing them, you know, that kind of thing is a, you know, it does give them the, like, you know, I did something for her or something. So like if you are always allowing your guy friend that you aren't interested in or whatever to do things for you, and even if they are just a genuinely nice, like giving type person, it can kind of blur the line there where maybe you're leading them on unintentionally.
Yeah, and you don't want to take advantage.
Yes.
And guys have a huge tendency by and large to, if they're coming to me for help, they could have gone to anybody, but they came to me.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm painting too broad of a brush, but like if somebody asked me like, hey, would you come change my tire?
Yeah.
And I was single,
right.
maybe I'm not saying I would, but a thought could easily enter of like, oh, I wonder why they didn't ask this person or that person. They came to me and like, you know, I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know if that is 100% true, but yeah, I can see I can see that in other people.
Right.
Sure.
I think it can just kind of blur those lines on that friendship vibe. And then let's say you start dating someone and they're totally shocked because they thought that you were into them or something. So
but I changed your tire.
I know. So
we had this special. I painted your living room.
Yeah. So I think just like being aware of like with your friends of the opposite gender, like what are you doing that's going to be different. So like if you are single right now, but let's say you meet someone next week, like what is that going to change? Because if it's not, then you probably need to reevaluate what you're doing with your friendships.
I have a good friend of mine they've been married about 3-4 years, and he had a good talk with his wife about this, and I won't say their names, but she had got not in a car wreck. Her car had broken down on the side of the road, and instead of calling her husband, she called her dad. It's like, hey, would you come and help me fix this? And he did, took care of it, and then she went home. And he found out, and he goes, why did you not call me? Like, I, as your husband, like, I should be the first person you call for this. And so I think that's what that should look like then once you enter a relationship. And so, like, hey, don't call your guy friends, don't call your female friends, like, call your significant other.
Yep.
Now, even if they don't know how to help, then that's different. Still call them. Like if you're like ladies, if your boyfriend does not know how to change a tire, first off, break up with him. But if he doesn't know how to like fix your car, that's fine. Inform him and then call somebody who can. That's okay. But if he has the means to help you, or like even outside of cars, like helping you move, things like that, like call him first or call her first.
Yeah.
Because they are the most important person in your life relationally, and then call those other people after that.
Yeah. Yep. That's really good. Okay. All right. So our next question is, what is the importance in dating for marriage? Like, do you feel like that's important? I think we kind of already talked on that. You did. But like, what is the importance of that versus just here and there dating? I'm
going to be very blunt when I say that. If you're a Christian, you're not dating for marriage, you're kind of dumb and you're kind of wasting your own time. I'm going to be just blunt. Sorry. And so I think people misconstrued what dating for marriage first looks like. So short answer, yes, you should be dating for marriage. You shouldn't, I think what our culture would say, quote unquote, like casual dating. What dating for marriage often gets misinterpreted as is, I'm just going to go out with one person and that one person is going to be my husband come hell or high water. And so no matter what happens, we're going to get married. And that's what dating for marriage looks like. And that's not what happens. So dating for marriage is just you date around, like go on different dates with people, pursue them through the lens of, can I see myself marrying this person? Because you're dating with the intent of marriage, not marrying them yet. And so you date with the intent of marriage, like could I see myself having a family with them? Do I see myself marrying them? Because the end goal will be marriage, and then taking it from there. And so a lot of people will get stuck into, well, I've been dating them for 4 months and things aren't going well, but like, it's them. It's like, well, no, it's not. Like, you're dating at the end of marriage, break up with them. And again, nobody wants to hear this, but hey, I just don't see myself marrying you is a valid reason to break up with somebody. It would be a knife in my heart if someone told me that, but I would respect them because I'm like, I get it. Like, you don't want them to marry someone they're not interested in.
Right.
And so you should be dating with the intent of marriage 100%. and just, I don't know. I just think if you're not doing that, then why are you going on dates in the first place as a Christian? An objection will get raised to that easily of, well, I'm going to date around because I need to know what I like and what I don't like. And those two things don't need to be divorced from one another. Those things can be, no pun intended, married together. You can date with the intent of marriage, and as you're dating with the end goal of marriage in mind, okay, this person does this, I don't like this, and I need to change this, or we're going to have a discussion on this, or okay, this person's not the person I'm going to want to be with, I'm going to break up with them, or we're going to end this relationship, move on to the next person. You're still developing what you like and what you don't like while you're dating with the intent of marriage. I think a lot of times we can get, it has to be one or the other. Like, no, like you're going to set yourself up for failure. If you're either going to get married to someone you can't stand, or you're never going to get married. And so, you know, we gotta find a way to bridge that gap.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think too, a lot of people just want to be in a relationship for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And for the maybe security blanket that it kind of brings.
Mm-hmm.
But that really goes back to that contentment kind of conversation. And
right.
And yeah, it's you don't want to, you know, spend all that time maybe with the wrong person when God's maybe calling you to do other things, to be with someone else or whatever. But just because you're so scared of being alone, you just want to have someone there, which is, I mean, it's very like, we are human. We all feel that way. So it's very easy, I think, to fall into that feeling.
And if you're in that feeling, and if you are coming at it from the lens of, I need to be in a relationship with this guy or this girl because I don't want to be alone and because of the security or whatever, you're elevating, them onto a pedestal that they don't need to be on, that God should be on, first off. But also what you're doing is you're entering a relationship for selfish means. What can I get out of this? I'm getting the meaning, validation, purpose, and security, which are blessings, and we all want that in our relationship. But when those become the idol and the end goal, it's going to be a whole kerfuffle, you know.
Yeah, that's perfect. Again, leading right into the next question. So that kind of goes to our second thing now. So masculine and feminine roles, and the kind of the importance of those. But yeah, just kind of give me your thoughts on that, and where that kind of what you believe on that spiritually, and just, you know, in the
I'll wear my biases pretty openly on my chest. I'm born and raised Southern Baptist. I am complementarian, so if you know what that term means, that helps you. I believe, if you don't know what that means, I believe, the man is the head of the house, and specifically the spiritual head of the household. And what that means is just I am responsible for the spiritual health and happiness and growth of my family. My wife plays a huge part in that. However, it stops with me. And, you know, I have to give an account. My wife will not have to give an account for the spiritual state of my family. I will. I'm the spiritual head. And I believe we see that in Ephesians 5, Colossians 3, and just echoed elsewhere in Scripture. But anyways, so that's, as I answer that question, I want people to kind of go and know where I'm at on that. I think it's very important. I think masculine and feminine roles look differently for everybody. If we get caught up in the superficial, like, well, the woman cooks and the man works, if that works for your family, awesome. I know people who, my biggest dream is to be a stay-at-home mom and to tidy up the house, and I want my husband to work. That's awesome. God's going to be glorified in that marriage if you find a husband who wants those things as well. But the mentality of, you're a woman, so you have to cook and clean, that ain't going to work.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so my point being, the roles are important, but you as a couple need to decide what that looks like. Now, the universal truth will be, in my opinion, if you want a more God-honoring relationship, is you are the man or I am the man. I will spiritually lead us. This is not to say my way or the highway. I value your input, kind of thing. But those roles are important. I think it's going to allow your relationship to flourish and to prosper. And, I always say this with anything. God wrote the manual on marriages. I think he knows how it works best. And if it's laid out in Scripture, whether you like it or not, that's the way God intends it to be, I believe. And you're going to experience a greater joy and love for your spouse if you kind of live into these roles, and if they don't naturally come to you, that's just a conversation you can have with people. There's no one size fits all with these masculine and feminine roles, and I know we're speaking in broader terms. It's just tricky. In the spiritual sense, I could speak to this a lot more.
Right.
When you get to physical, I love to cook. I'm a huge cook. Love to do it. My dad cooked a lot in my family's at our home, in my family's relationship, and my current girlfriend doesn't like to cook, and
there you go.
That's okay with me.
There you go.
I'm confident in my cooking. She can't handle spice. Cracked pepper will put her in the hospital. So that's the learning curve you gotta have. But you know, if I was to come in and be like, "Well, you're the woman, you have to cook," that's the feminine role.
Right.
I am sinning in saying that, because that's just not. You're putting someone in a box that they don't need to be in.
That's good.
I don't know if that answers that.
No, that is good, and it's a weird topic, especially in our culture today, when you have all this, you know, feminine stuff and, you know, feminists and stuff like that. But I do think there's a component to what the how God created men and how he created women, and and then when you are in a relationship with someone, what that looks like. I think when the guy does take more of the leadership role, this is something that I've really kind of known, but maybe I just didn't really like understand it fully that I do now. But I think you know, obviously at the fall, Eve kind of it does talk about how the woman will kind of want to be more the men's role, and she will and so I think it is easy for girls to kind of just want to just take control of that. But I feel like when it is in proper form, God blesses that relationship a lot more. And so I did want, if it's okay, I'm gonna go ahead and read. I had seen this post on Instagram right before we were getting ready to film this podcast, and so it was by someone I follow on Instagram, and I reached out to him and asked if I could share it, and it really just goes along with this. And like I was saying, I was talking to Nate before, but like there are faults on both sides in our culture. Women can mess up, guys can mess up too. But going back to the leading, I think guys have like an honor, like they should feel honored that they can set the stage. Like you guys like can lead. And I think the girls are going to realize, you know, oh my gosh, like they're going to respect that a lot more if a guy is like, no, this is what I believe scripture says about our relationship or our boundaries or our, you know, whatever. When they take that initiative, like I think that is going to totally reset the stage on a lot of things. So but anyway, so there's this trend going around, and I'll go ahead and read the trend, but then I'll read what so it's Joseph Johnson, JJD Visuals on Instagram, and he's the one who put the caption. But I'll go ahead and read the trend that's been going around a little bit. And so the trend says, it says, take her to church, not your bed, buy her flowers, not plan B, commit to her, don't use her, be a man, not a boy. And then it goes on to say, love her without conditions, just like Jesus loves us and died for our sins. Love her without anything in return, and be a man, a true leader. So his caption was, what happens when a man gets it right in today's society? He says, when a man becomes disciplined, when a man is slow to anger, when a man has self-control, when a man takes control of his sexual desires, when a man understands biblical love, when a man becomes a biblical servant leader, when a man is led by God's word rather than his own ways, you know what happens. Women's bodies and hearts are protected. Children are safe. The moral and righteousness of families increases. Wives are loved unconditionally. People around them are impacted, and lives are changed. And then he just goes on to say that, you know, if you are a guy that follows him, that he encouraged you to stop living in the definition of what the world calls a man to be, and start living in the way that God, with so much purpose, created you to be. Men are going to impact the lives of others in good or bad ways, and that the best decision that they can make for their future family, wife, and friends, an empire, would be to choose to follow Christ and be a leader that God called you to be. But I thought it was so good, and he lists some Bible verses and stuff, which we're going to jump into that more at the end. But I just thought it was so good because it's so like like I said, this should be an honor, I feel like, for guys to kind of have that stage to set. And when they do, I feel like the Lord is just going to like bless that relationship so much more, in not just your relationship, but the people around you, maybe your future children one day, that kind of thing. And so I just thought it was a good post leading up to this podcast. So I was like, I'm going to share it. Yeah, the timing was perfect. So anyways, I thought that was just a good thing to kind of mention. But okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on. All right, so why do you think so many struggle today in dating? And what do you think the hardest part of dating in today's world is? Yeah,
I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And kind of what we were saying even earlier, both faults lie on both parties, you know, on the women of today's society and the men of today's society. But I think with the rise of social media, and I'm not going to be here like, social media is bad. You know, no, I love social media, you know. If it wasn't for TikTok, I don't know how I'd pass my time, that kind of thing, or how I'd get 10,000 followers. No. But with the rise of social media, it's allowed us to obviously put on our best selves and wear a mask, look like we have it all together, not see like the quote unquote real me. And I think also with just the rise of dating apps, I'm not against dating apps. I've been on dating apps. And I think dating apps allow us to live into the most shallow versions of ourselves, where we can just look at a picture of someone and go, you know, or I can look at a guy's profile, look at a girl's profile, like, oh, there's no pictures of other people in these photos. I bet they have no friends. Next. And it's like, well, you can't pass that judgment. You don't know. And so I think social media, but dating apps have just allowed people to be so shallow. And now it's easy to date on dating apps. There's no reason for me to go out and meet someone. And as a guy's perspective and as a guy's heart, there's just the immense fear of rejection. And the best way to get over it is to just do it. And that's like, you know, it's the best advice, but the worst advice. Like, how do you get over rejection? You just go for it. But guys are just scared to ask people out. I can't speak for girls, of course. But guys are nervous, and me personally, when I was single, when I'd see a beautiful girl at the gym or at the coffee shop, or even just anywhere, I would just naturally assume that they were dating, or naturally assume that they're married. Because I was afraid of rejection. It's like, I don't want to go. Nobody wants to get told no. I was like, I don't want to go over, shoot my shot, and then she's like, I got a husband, or actually I'm dating someone, and you'd be like, oh, I can never show my face here ever again, you know, kind of thing. Yeah. And so that's a symptom of fear of rejection. So I think that's a huge thing in our day and age that just people were nervous about. And there's nothing wrong with having standards. I think having high standards are good. I think just again, a lot of us, the older we get and the more we've stayed single, we continuously raise our standards until there's no one on earth that will match those. I have a good friend of mine, and his standards are impossible. There is not a person who will ever meet them. And if he meets someone that like, dude, I think you guys would be great together. No, they're not these different things. And again, there's nothing wrong with having standards, but they don't need to be like dogmatic about them. And it's like, dude, you're going to be single lovingly, bro. You're going to be single for well into your 40s if you keep these standards, because you're just being super unrealistic. You gotta like
unrealistic is you gotta
chill, bring it back a little bit.
I think that goes with the, like you were saying, the social media type thing. We have these expectations of a false reality. Yeah. And it is very hard to get yourself out of the hole once you kind of start thinking that way. And I know it's just so easy with the world we're living in. I think there's too many options as well. Even with the dating app type stuff, you know, back then in the olden days, in the glory days, you know, there was a lot more, oh, I know so-and-so down the street, or, oh, you'd be perfect with, whoever. And so now it's like, if you're not feeling it, or you're like, on the line, you have so many options to choose from. Everyone's disposable now. And it's just very easy to fall into, well, there's probably better.
Yeah.
And there always will be someone, there always is someone better at something than maybe someone else. You know, there's always going to be that. But that doesn't mean that love is a choice. And what I'm asking for, an unrealistic Instagram perfect type filter that's not legit.
You can't have two, like if your non-negotiables are in the double digits, then you got to chill out a little bit, you know? Like it's like, oh my gosh, if they're a morning person, we can't be together.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have a hard time dating someone, you know?
And that's also putting it as like, you know best, when really God knows, you know, maybe you do need someone that's, you know, a little more relaxed or a little more, like just to balance you. You just don't know. Or maybe God does want you with someone exactly like you, but you have to be flexible on that.
Yeah, God knows best, and not to say your way is wrong or less than, but there are other ways that things can get accomplished or be done. And so, if you're like, it's got to be my way, or they're not going to do that, or like I'm not going to be with them, then like, no, that's just not going to happen. You're going to have a really tough time dating. And so I think that's another issue. Yeah, it's just people are not, I don't want to say too picky, but people just have way too many preferences. And you're right, like, I know I can find someone with this because there's so many options. Well, I know I can find someone that's not gonna be a problem. Well, you're gonna find someone that problem's fixed, and then they're gonna have their own problems.
Yeah.
And you're just gonna keep recycling through, and the next thing you know, you're 40 and have a bunch of cats.
Yeah.
And so.
And I think if you are so in tuned enough with yourself and you have a relationship with God, that's obviously going to be your saving grace there. But you're gonna see God in. You know, I think God does give us, you know, little bits of encouragement. Maybe this is the right direction, or maybe this isn't, you know? And so if you're seeking that, it's not going to be a long drug on process of, oh, is this still the right person for me? Like, you will see signs from Lord that, whoa, like this happened. So this is probably an indication. Now, not always. It's not always like, oh, this is a sign from the heavens that this is the one. But you need to be open to like, wow, like, that lined up weird, or that, you know. And so being very in tune with yourself and God.
For sure.
Okay, so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this one because we are running a little bit short on time, and we will film a part 2 and finish up this conversation in that episode. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.
It was a fly right when you started, so
really?
I did that. I think that's funny. Just
You can keep it, but I was just like, I like went, and then it's like I kept looking at the camera.
Do we need to redo it, or was it fine?
I don't. It's up to you. I don't know. I was just a bug flew in my face. The spider on her leg. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh. I was like, why wouldn't you just hit it? Don't just tell me.
Boom.
Yeah. All right. Okay, how do I say this? Do I say with that being said? Because I'm gonna have to end it on something here. So with that being said.
You're sure.
All right, so with that all being said, so thanks so much for watching and sticking around with us, and we will be back shortly. Okay, let me do another one. I don't like the back shortly, because we're not going to be back shortly. I'm going to have to watch the second one.
Fair.
So.